Winning gold isn't the main focus of this year's Olympics in Russia. It's the safety of the athletes. So much so that the State Department has issued a travel alert for Americans going to the Games and is warning our athletes not to wear any Team USA gear when they're not on Olympic grounds. Some members of Team USA are even telling their families to stay home. All this as Russian officials are reportedly on the hunt for potential suicide bombers, so-called Black Widows. So is a terror attack inevitable? With me, terror analyst Eric Stakelback and former CIA analyst Fred Fleitz. All right, guys, I'll start with you, Fred. Is it safe for the athletes and their families to attend the Games this year in Sochi, Russia?
Judge, I think it's going to be safe for them in the Sochi area because of the enormous security presence. I'm worried that the Russians are not sharing security information with U.S. intelligence.
Why is that? Fred, back up. Why do you think the Russians are not sharing that intelligence with the United States? I mean, we have a vested interest. Our people are there.
And the British did this during their Olympics. The Greeks did this during their Olympics. It's a matter of pride. It is simply the way the Russians operate. I think there's going to be terrorist attacks, Judge, but I think it's going to be outside of the Sochi area. But I'm cautiously optimistic that Russia can protect the Games.
All right, Eric, I'll go to you. We know that Russia tried to tell us about the Boston bombers, and we also know that Sochi, where the Games are being held, is like 300 miles from Chechnya, Dagestan, where those bombers were from. I mean, do you think that if there is a suicide bomber, that it's a Russian or Americans? I mean, who are their targets?
Well, Judge, this is a very interesting question because if you look at Chechnya, you look at Dagestan, yes, the #1 target is Russia. They want to break away from Russia and form their own Islamic emirate. But also, Judge, key point here, over the past few years, we've seen these Chechens, these Dagestanis, show up in places like Pakistan, Somalia, Yemen, Syria, southern Russia. Chechnya, Dagestan is now becoming part of this global jihad. So look, yes, they'll first target Russian athletes, but Judge, and Russian security services, of course, but a big question here is, will they also target Westerners because of these al-Qaeda links that they have?
Okay, and Fred, back to you. When Russia says that they are hunting these Black Widows, why the Black Widows in particular? And is it more difficult to identify a Black Widow than maybe a normal suicide bomber who's a male?
Well, lone wolf attackers are hard to find, but female lone wolf attackers are extremely difficult to find. They can blend in. It's something that security forces are not ready to do.
All right. And, Eric, I'll go back to you on that. Don't the Black Widows generally, aren't they generally together, that there's not just one, that they're together in a team?
You know, that can vary, Judge, but here's the key thing about these Black Widows. Look, for them, it is personal. It's ideological. Of course, they are fanatics, but they lost their husbands. Their husbands, these Black Widows, are terrorists who were killed by Russian security services. Key thing here, Judge, also, they will likely not be wearing the Muslim veil. They'll be in street clothes. They'll have jeans on, a sweatshirt, or what have you. So you're not looking for a Caucasian woman. Let's be honest. When you're looking for an Islamic terrorist, you're usually looking for a male, and that works to these Black Widows' advantage, and they're deadly. They've struck several times in Russia. All
right, and Fred, what can you tell us about the Russian security?
It's going to be intense. 40,000 security forces that we know of, fighter jets overhead, incredible checkpoints, surveillance cameras. There's going to be ships in the Black Sea. It's going to be very intense in Sochi. But I'm concerned that there's going to be attacks elsewhere, maybe train lines to Sochi, maybe train stations outside of Sochi, maybe in Moscow. Something I think is going to happen to embarrass Putin. And if they can't get to Sochi, there's going to be a big attack somewhere else in the country.
Well, you know, Eric, I'll go to you finally. I mean, you know, there is no United States Constitution in Russia, and they're not limited by the constitutional rights of people being investigated. I mean, do you feel at least that Putin has a vested interest, since he has tried so hard to come out on the international scene as a big power, that, you know, he may have things under control?
Judge, he's going to pull out all the stops. And the thing about Putin is he does not care about world opinion. He does not care about political correctness. He has shown time and time again that he will be heavy-handed. And quite frankly, he's not really concerned with civilian casualties either. So that gives you the fact that he is a pretty lawless guy in many ways, Judge, as you said, that gives you a glimmer of hope, I guess, that he'll have such a tight rein on these Olympic Games. And again, like you said, his reputation is on the line. And if these games are hit in a major way, Putin takes a major hit as well.
All right, Eric and Fred, thanks so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you, Judge.
All right. And coming up, the American power grid could go down at any moment. Do you know what to do if the lights go out? Did you know that this little straw could save your life? Information everyone needs. Next. It's a straw. It really is. It's a straw.